Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? Thank you for being here. Cynthia, Firefighter Fairy, Debbie Webb, Iron Rabbit, Miami Spice, hey, Heidi, D. Robertson. Hey, everybody. And for those who haven't checked in, welcome. All right, so. Yeah, and Sue. Hey, Sue. How you doing? All right, so we can wait a couple of minutes if you want. What's everybody been up to? Aside from little hurricane issues. You're so excited. Well, don't get too excited, Miami. It's this is a ridiculous adventure. This will be on chapter 5. Let's see. Yeah, the consigliere last time ended the chapter with a sudden bang. So we'll see where it goes from here. I have no idea how the story goes. Well, thank you, Miami. Yeah. All right, so if everybody's settled in, I think we have, what did I count up? I think if we do 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 chapters tonight, then we'll have 4 or 5, depending on how we do it, left to go. So we'll see how this goes. Maybe I should go to the corner store before they close. Yeah, go get some stuff. Go get something to drink. Get settled in. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Let's see. I really need a laugh. It's been a rough week. Yeah, it has. And I know you got other stuff going on too, Robert. Well, we'll see what happens. You never know. Share for the win. All right. Let's go ahead and kick this off, I think. Okay. Chapter 5. Now, certainly Billy was in a tight place, or as Wobbits call it, indoors. The tunnel he had wandered into seemed to have no end, and he was beginning to think that holding his breath for good luck might not have been the best idea. He exhaled, which quickly turned into a yawn, which quickly turned into eating a sandwich, which slowly turned into the realization that a sandwich made out of rocks and bats was going to be just as much trouble coming out as it was going in. As is the tradition in long noble quests to regain the rightful home of a lost people, it had been nearly 5 chapters since anybody in Billy's party had relieved themselves. Billy himself had been waiting for the right moment, but he'd gotten the distinct feeling that there was always somebody watching him who would share in his every bowel movement with an embarrassingly middle-aged audience in a homey, light-hearted style. It was in the state of looking for a handicap-accessible bathroom. He had not quite yet lowered himself to the humiliation of a regular stall, that he came upon a tiny ring of gold medals lying on the floor of the tunnel. It was a turning point in his career, though. He did not know it, as he couldn't decipher the invitation to the LinkedIn that Necromort, the Valdemancer, had carved on the inside of it. It did, however, fill his head with unpleasant little whispers about the corrupting influence of power and how potency, or perhaps potentiality, if it is to be exercised and produce results, has to be externalized, and so passes to a greater or lesser degree out of one's direct control. All told, it was a fairly tiresome, self-important piece of jewelry, and Billy quickly tossed it aside when he came up on an even shinier anklet a few yards away. On and on he went, down and down, and still he heard no sound of anything, except the occasional thought that going on and down was a very bad way to stop being underground. He briefly considered taking the 405, which would have been suicide at the time of day, and even more briefly considering taking the bus, which would have been a homicide at pretty much any time of its eternal night. I do not know how long he kept on like this, hating to go on, not daring to stop, and completely unaware of the fact that the steady rate cardio is a prohibitively inefficient way of burning calories while building muscle. If I had to guess, though, probably about 10 or 15 minutes. Suddenly, without any warning, besides the increasing dampness of the air and the changing consistency of the ground and a bunch of kitschy surf shops, Billy trotted and splashed into water. He tested it and tasted it to make sure, hoping against hope that he may have stumbled on the fabled biggest gulp. But there was no trace of corn syrup in the vile concoction. This did remind Billy, however, that he still had a little regular syrup left in his flask, so he promptly sat down to rehydrate and pass out for half an hour of dreamless shame sleep. Deep down there, by the other side of the water, lived old Goldstein, a small, unethical, unathletic creature. I don't know where he came from, nor who or what he was. He was Goldstein, as fair-skinned as SPF 30, and a sensible hat on a hot day in the park that would allow. What? Truly, he was a frightening apparition, though. This was mainly due to his hair, which simply had a mind of its own in moisture like this. And when he was out there all day on the boat, forget it. He would just shave it off, but his bub, whatever, would never forgive him. And anyway, she's been through enough, hasn't she? Bless her heart. Oh, booby. Or however you say that, whatever. He loved company, but rarely got it, as the moblin sensed that the depths of the cave just weren't their kind of neighborhood, and even the fish would rather that he find his own slimy pool of darkness to swim in. So when Goldstein saw Billy stirring up from his sugar nap, he got up from his strange feast and called out to him. Hey there, you. The Schmel who... Oh, he's still talking. The Schmel who looks like he ate the schmizzle. You look like a man who wouldn't miss the chance to put a little more nosh in that tuckus, whatever. And when Goldstein said the last word, he made a terrible swallowing noise in his throat, the likes of which Billy had never heard anywhere in Middle-earth. Billy nearly jumped out of his skin, which is precisely why Wobbits do their best to always have a lot of extra skin. What are you? Billy stammered. I do a different one. I think I might do my sling blade. Well, what am I? Well, if you ask my mother, I'm a trial sent from God to test her tender heart.
I tell you what, though. That was a woman. That's all you want. But she'd never hear a word of it. And bless her heart, if it didn't take a lot of chutzpah to raise this little terror. She always said she'd throw me right into Mordor one day, and I wouldn't put it past her to do it. After all, one does not simply walk in the temple without first saying hello to Grandpa George and the rabbi. All right then.
Goldstein had a habit of talking to himself, which Billy found so unnerving that he had come across the lake just to stab the fiend in the side with a sword.
Shalom to you too, little pharaoh.
Goldstein winced, bandaging his wound with self-deprecating humor and the help of the first aid kit he always had handy.
Your people call that a conversation. Mine call it a Tuesday. Still, this is a Seder, not a bris. Oh man, this is painful. This is powerful painful. So how you trading the dagger for a piece of matzah and a cup of wine?
I am Billy Bagboy, Billy squealed. I've lost the little people, and I've lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am, and I don't know if only I can get away.
Get away. I tried that once. I figured there was waste that mile. What? Why waste the miles and getting down to Florida? Convince my dad that the crocodile... Wait a minute, they're not... What? Were stealing from him, and the egrets weren't speaking German. I fly United. What do I know? I'm telling you you're better off taking a stagecoach than flying coach. And this is coming from a guy who only needs one leg's worth of legroom between the two of them.
Oh my God, this is painful. All right, I need a break already. Oh, Jesus. You need me to squeal as Billy? What? I got her, Spud. Oh, man. I don't know how so many of you are saying that you like this one better than the first one. Oh, this one's painful. Oh, my God. Yeah. Laugh it up, Gutter Spud. Yeah. All right, where was I? Okay. This is a sword, a blade that was forged to kill moblins.
Maybe a lifetime of sausage and simple carbs will take care of that for you. Now that you want a yada yada and all that, come have a seat. Elijah won't mind. He never shows up anyway. Get my sling blade. I'm assuming you don't know the 4 questions.
Billy had heard of these deadly sort of riddle games, played by only the most evil, diabolical creatures or anybody on day 2 or 3 of a road trip. Very well, creature, said Billy, summoning his courage. I'll play your game. If you win, you may eat me.
He's willing.
But if I win, you must show me the way out of here. Goldstein laughed this off, prone to mistaking funny ideas for humor.
All right, then, he said. Me first. Now, why is this night different from all other nights?
Billy had never heard this riddle before, and he attempted to think deeply about it. He went about as deep as his stomach before the answer came grumbling out of him. I'm hungry.
That's about a good answer I ever got. They don't call matzah the bread of affliction for nothing.
Ha! Now it's my turn, Mr. Beast.
Well, okay then. A little unorthodox to take turns, but once you start the reform, who am I to stop it? Go ahead. win one more for the Goyim.
Billy knew his life depended on the riddle, so he tried to think of something complex, whose every intellectual twist and turn would leave Goldstein gasping for air and begging for mercy. Something that seemed simple and elegant, but held the key to a vast and ancient wisdom. All of which seemed fairly difficult, so Billy just said a bunch of stupid things in a row. It cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelt. It lies behind the stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. Jesus. I already see where this is going. Gutters, you paying attention to this? It comes first and follows after, ends life and kills laughter. Billy was rather proud of this one, and thought he must have read it on his cousin's Tumblr at one point or another. But Goldstein barely hesitated.
The housing bubble. That's an easy one. Optimus Prime overwritten. It's all bogus anyway. But try telling that to my brother Jerry, where he starts bundling ints and saying tree houses were never gonna stop growing. Well, See what kills his laughter in a month or two, that's all I'm saying. Pop one bubble and there's another swelling up faster than my great-granny's goiter.
No. As usual, Billy had no idea what Goldstein was talking about, so he responded by stabbing him in the leg again.
Ah, that hurts. Don't you?
No shit.
Don't you know the classics at least? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you stab us repeatedly, does it not aggravate or stress our induced asthma?
This was the hardest riddle yet for Billy, as it seemed both satirical and rhetorical. Two words that he had no time to look up. Plus, stabbing Goldstein seemed to work just about as well as trying to understand him. And somehow, it seemed to fit in better with the grand sweep of history. Who the hell is this? Okay.
Ow, alrighty then. In my day, we had to call up at least 4 or 5 of the plagues to get out of a satyr. But the Maccabees just ain't what they used to be. I can show you the way out. Just let me get a napkin and I'll write it down for you. The street signs are schmutz down here. I've been trying to get the city council to fix them for months. But they're on somebody's pocket, or else they're just half in the bag. Now, I'm not saying I'm a picture of perfect health, but if I was more shiksa and less schmuck, maybe then.
As Goldstein trailed off into a soothing rhythm of complaints, Billy started searching his pockets for food. What he found instead was the anklet he had picked up before. He'd always wondered if he could pull off an anklet, but the necessary combination of flexibility and having a locatable ankle had always stopped him. This anklet, however, slipped on perfectly, which, in Billy's mind, meant he managed to squeeze it between 2 equidistant shapeless fat rolls, which without causing a chain reaction. Suddenly, he felt the heated rush of high fashion and lowered circulation. Meanwhile, Goldstein had finally found both a napkin and a working pen in the very back of one of his many drawers.
Here we are. So, you're just going to take the first left out of here, and then, Billy, where is you?
Goldstein looked around in bewilderment, and Billy thought it must be because of his new and daring accessory. He hopped away from the table and began to gloat, which he normally reserved for a hot dog eating contest and buttered cat swallowing tournaments. Oh, that's right, you filthy trickster. I've won your game, and I've stolen your anklet, and no matter how much you obsess over it and covet it, I'll never give it back.
You found my anklet. I was wondering what became of that. Well, see now, I'd really prefer it if you didn't take it. It belonged to my great-grandmother, and it's really all I have left after her, okay? Again, with the stabbing. In the spirit of Passover, I gives it to you. Mazel tov.
I've tricked you again, and now I'm taking it, and I'm leaving.
Okay then. But make sure to keep it out of water. You might get it polished ever so often. I know a guy who does that sort of thing. And he's,
But before Gollum could even finish his catchphrase, Billy stabbed him again, pelted him with a few rocks, and took off into the dark mountain, leaving Goldstein to wish he had followed his mother's advice and become a doctor all those years ago. Oh my God, that was painful. So that was Shitty Chapter 5. God, Jesus. All right. Eat me. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. All right. Now on to Chapter 6. Let's see here. Yeah. Chapter 6. It goes without saying that somewhere between Chapter 5 and 6, Billy found his way out of the mountain. But the backside of a mountain is no place to know where you are. He was terribly lost, and had already had quite enough of his YOLO. His apparel had fared little better. He had lost his hood, his cloak, belt, trousers, and shoes, and he was now almost completely naked, save his fast-forwarding and fashionable anklet. He waddled down a stony path and sat down firmly on a rock stump to think about where to go and what to do. He looked forward, then backward, then forward again, until he was out of breath and deliriously fantasizing about his wabbit hole, which he was beginning to think of as his own little anti-mountain. He knew he had a decision to make. Now that he had in his possession an anklet that complemented his figure, his self-confidence was at an all-time high. But with good looks came great responsibility, and based on the episodic nature of this quest, Billy knew that his friends were probably in grave danger right about now. A hero in the same circumstances might consider it his duty to go back and save his friends, murdering any bit characters and extras that got in his way. But our poor Wabbit, a hero? He rose valiantly in the only shining light of the afternoon, his anklet glistening with courage and sweat. I almost said cougar sweat. Only he could single-handedly defeat the 6 million moblins, revive half of his friends that were certainly already dead, and carry everyone to safety out of a complex labyrinthian mountain that he had no idea how to navigate. Who am I kidding? He said intelligently. He sat back down and tried eating a slug he'd found on the ground. It was a wise decision, for not a moment after he'd given up on his ragtag crew of little people did he hear voices in the fields below. He crept around a convenient rock that was just about Wobbit tall and just a little less than Wobbit wide.
I missed that bad boy,
he heard Hoary say. Oh no. Wait a minute. Which one is that? Oh no, that's one of the girls. I miss the bag boy, he heard Hoary whine. He made me feel not so fat. Pretending that he's that rock over there that's shaped exactly like him is totally not making me feel better about myself, she sighed. Slory and Courtney looked at her in confusion. Because it's a rock, and a rock's not a living thing, she clarified, and Slory and Courtney nodded with their normal amount of confusion. Jesus. Hearing this delighted our clogged Wobbit's heart. He wheeled around and looked on the other side of the rock. There before him was Balin, standing guard, and not, it is worth mentioning, because everyone else presumed he would look the most intimidating to enemies. They just believed he was the most capable to carry out the task due to his years of experience at standing guard, which he had gotten because people always presumed him to be the most intimidating. I will give him a surprise, Billy thought, and threw a handful of confetti in his face. Yet Balin did not react other than to wipe some dirt off his shoulder. Unfazed, Billy waited patiently to be appreciated. He began to notice something curious. Though Balin was standing right in front of Billy, he was looking everywhere except right at the Wobbit. When Billy moved to one side and wobbled his hands about, Balin reflexively looked the other direction. When Billy headed for that direction, Balin would again promptly look away. This continued for some time until Billy's arms wobbled themselves to exhaustion, and Balin was stricken with an inexplicable headache. Billy proceeded past Balin nervously, and began to doubt how attractive his anklet truly was. He stationed himself in the center of the camp. The little people in Dumbledaff carried on as if he weren't there. Wait a minute, who's this? Oh, we can't leave him behind. After all, he is my friend, said the wizard. I have a friend. At least one friend. He thoughtfully yanked out a whole tuft of his beard, his voice lowered solemnly. Although I think he might be half a blood. What? Whatever.
Aye, all this talking without walking has given me a terrible migraine,
said Shorkenshield. The others nodded, feeling flashes of pain in their prefrontal cortexes as well. It was as though they had paid $4 or $5 extra to experience something that was definitely worse than the original experience.
Nay, it's like all I can see is a distorted reality playing out before me eyes,
continued Shorkenshield, who was really high at this point. Billy did not appreciate being spoken of as though he were not present. He was about to get angry, but instead took 3 deep breaths, counted to 10, and realized the real issue. The little people and wizard were far too sensible to associate themselves with anyone wearing an anklet so brazenly. Fine, Billy acquiesced. I understand. I'll remove the anklet. He shoved a few fat rings out of the way and wrenched the thing off.
Ah, welcome back,
his friend shouted with delight as soon as his anklet clasp was released.
Hooray!
They cheered. The proper manner of speaking in unison for such a YOLO occasion. When spirits returned to their usually depressing low level, Balin approached the Wobbit.
How did you ever get by me?
He asked, quite impressed.
Normally, I'm highly skilled in guarding due to my experience.
Who's that? Oh, what we have here is perhaps a case of reverse racism, Billy speculated. Can I not be an equally skilled burglar due to my lack of experience? None of them followed his lack of logic, but they figured if they relieved him of his nakedness, maybe he'd stop saying uncomfortable things about his race. So, Ballin lent Billy the hood of his cloak to cover himself, and Loin assisted in fashioning it into a cloth. Then they wanted to know all about his adventures after they had lost him, and he told them everything at once, stopping only 4 times for wheezing and 3 times for some cake.
What did I tell you?
Laughed Dumbledaff.
Harry has more about him than you guess.
He gave Billy a queer look, his eyes half twinkling, half drugged. Then Billy had questions of his own to ask, for he wished to know of his friend, or how his friends had escaped the grasp of the Moblins.
A rather tacklish business, Loin said. Touch and go, but Dumbledaff knew about the back door. I'm sure he did. And once you know about it, it's just a matter of getting through it. It's a wooden door, so we used axes.
Everyone groaned in disappointment, especially since Loin could have made something out of wood. What?
I know my way around the dark,
explained Dumbledaff.
I'm not a wizard for nothing. I am a wizard.
He paused. Everyone waited eagerly for the rest of what he had to say, but he only stared at the grass and hummed a John Williams theme to himself. Just then a battle cry echoed down from the mountain.
Wait a minute, who's this? Oh. It seems that the Moblins are on to us,
somebody said. Honestly, I can't remember who. Probably Drawlin or something. Whatever. Sorkinshield took the opportunity to make a short speech about courage in the face of 6 million equally courageous mountain creatures. Then they all gathered in a huddle and high-fived one another before setting off as fast as they could. The Moblins were in non-trivial pursuit, riding atop an army of Wargis. Jesus. Though Billy had never seen one before, the breed had a reputation for being fiercely adorable. All of a sudden, a clearing opened up before the party. They stopped once, awestruck. Beneath the full moon, scrunched on tiny hind legs, sat the cutest little wargig pup they'd ever seen, adorably licking its genitals. The wargie rolled over and pawed the ground, but its futile attempts at ferocity only made it cuter. Courtney could not help herself. I suspect you would not have done much better. She ran forward, sweeping the wargie off the ground and tossing the furry fiend into her purse.
"A Poochie and Gucci,"
she whispered, tearing up. It was a trap, of course. No sooner did the wargie begin to vomit in Courtney's purse than 6 million Moblins surrounded them from all sides. A Moblin henchman strutted forth and whipped the remnants of cannoli from his stubble.
Looks like you're outnumbered 14 to 6 million. To win this fight, you'd either need an army of over 5 million, or exactly 300.
Billy and the others looked around, surveying their options. They had somehow crossed into a vacant landscape, with nowhere to run. Surrounding them was nothing but a nuclear bunker, an armory, a time machine, and a tree. With no other choice, they scurried up the tree. Oh, you would have laughed, from an omniscient perspective, if you had seen the little people there, sitting high up in the branches of the tree, like they were giants, with little heads and trees for bodies. Their beards swung beneath them, dangling perilously close to the ground. Billy had always been afraid of heights. It is no secret he only felt safe below ground level. Even when standing at ground level, the view was downright terrifying. He could free fall 4.5 feet to his death at any moment. So, staring down from the soaring heights of the larch tree was enough to make Billy lose his appetite. And not just because larch was different to chew. It was mildly choking Billy at present. What? Whatever. He continued eating the larch leaves anyway, confident that somebody else was coming up with a grand escape plan. Kiwi puffed out his plumage and widened his eyes, the natural response of the southern brown kiwi to a predator or other threat, while Philly looked at things, which is the natural response to any situation of a character whose only real trait is that he can see well. Meanwhile, Dumbledaff was too busy hanging upside down and saying, "Weh," to help much with an escape. And Sorkenshield was already furiously writing a note to his agent about getting a new quest on basic cable. There was, however, one very convenient piece of good news, and it was this. Neither Moblins nor Wargs could climb a tree. Run an integrated mob syndicate? Sure. Sing their hearts out to a catchy, spontaneously composed tune? Who can't? But climb a tree? No, not a chance. With this in mind, Sorkenshield proposed the only sensible plan. We'll just wait it out. He'd seen this work 1,000 times in the movies he'd written. As though on cue, the Moblins broke out in song. Sorkenshield had read the situation perfectly. This is their song, apparently. But as usual, I'm not going to sing it. Bunch of little people sitting in a tree, kissing. First comes love. Kissing. First comes love. Then comes marriage. Then comes baby in a baby carriage. Then comes school. Then comes mortgage. Then comes disappointment, divorce, alimony, emotional scarring, a second mortgage, remarriage, another baby in a nicer baby carriage, which makes the first baby kind of jealous. But it's time for him to grow up, get his act together and meet a nice girl so he can start the whole thing all over again. Apparently I was supposed to read that fast. Sorkenshield hated the song and frivolity in general. He blamed the whole mess on Courtney and her wargy obsession. What? Oh.
You just did a big thing badly. Get out of my office,
he shouted at the three sisters, gesturing toward a branch on which he'd written, Aaron Sorkenshield currently for hire. Oh, God.
We just wanted to have fun, said up Courtney. We're just girls, continued Slory. Girls just want to have fun,
Courtney concluded, properly executing for the first time in her life the transitive property of equality. But the fact remained that the little people needed to do something to calm the hubbub transpiring below them. It was not a good sign that the Moblins were patient enough to write another verse and rehearse the lyrics to perform together in a 6 million part chorus. Oh my God. I'm not singing. What? Oh my God. Okay, so apparently it's the theme to The Godfather, and I'm not humming it either. Sorkenshield couldn't stand that somebody was singing that he hadn't written into the screenplay. He was coming to his wit's end. There was nothing he could do. Everything was black. Then he opened his eyes and saw everything was normal colored again, but still bad.
You know the word patriot means a lot of things, he said. It's about seeing things through, about loving what matters, about acting. Wait, what? Oh, acing every test you've ever been given. I can only see things with one eye because I have to squint. Where'd I go? Oh, here's the truth. Repatriate is a word that sounds a lot like patriot. It means to take back. I think it's high time. We all have what? We all take what we have left. Oh, Jesus, this is giving me a headache. Okay, never mind, we're moving on.
Of course, they'd all heard him say that 100 times before. Nobody believed he would actually take his life and jump from the tree. A man of his eloquence could simply just not fall. He had to be felled. But they were wrong. It was a plot twist they should have seen coming from a man like Sorkenshield. He let go of the wind-slapped boughs to it. What? Okay. He let go of the wind-slapped boughs to an audience full of gasps, tumbling down through both the pines and the cones toward a 100% certain death, plus or minus a 10% chance of error. And yet, someone must have rounded up the statistics. Just as Sorkenshield's biopic trailer was flashing before his eyes, he was snatched out of the air by the red-hot hands of six-time Pro Bowler and star receiver for the 2004 Philadelphia Eagles, Terrell Owens. "Touchdown!" Owens declared, dancing in the chaos and spiking Sorkenshield into the ground. Before anyone could comprehend what was going on, Eagles running back, Brian Westbrook swept Feely, Killy, Slory, Horry, and Courtney into his bosom and charged down the field. Beefer and Buffer found refuge in 2004 NFC Offensive Player of the Year Donovan McNabb's embrace, and were one by one tossed in perfect spirals to wide receiver Greg Lewis. Oh, God. Linebacker Jeremiah Trotter scooped up the rest, and Billy and Dumbledaff rode on his shoulder pads. This was a bit lopsided due to Billy's great weight and Dumbledaff's lack of bone density, but nothing could stop the Eagles when victory was on the line. Billy could not believe their luck. The 2004 NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles were the most majestic creatures in the land. While lesser species flew, the Eagles soared, straight to a 27-10 victory over the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC Championship. The all-star roster deposited Billy and his friends in the safety of the Eagles' locker room, where they sprayed one another with champagne from bottle after bottle, slapped buttock after buttock, and generally provided loin and groin with a host of material that the two chose to respectively pass on. After the obligatory revelry had been had, a hush fell over the locker room, and Eagles head coach Andy Reid entered stoically. He was as gallant as the legends claimed, and more adorable than a wargie. One day he might rise up to be the king of all the birds, which is an actual monarchy that, for complicated socio-political reasons, all birds are okay with. "I heard you were stuck up in a tree, as they say," said the brave leader of the Eagles. "I owed Dumbledaff a favor from a few years back. He drew up quite a trick play for us in the 2004 NFC Championship games against those good-for-nothing Falcons. Not even I knew where the ball was, and it hasn't been spotted since." Dumbledaff blushed and removed the football from underneath his cloak. Coach Reid cawed pleasantly and took the ball into his conference-winning hands. Perhaps it's time for some light-hearted fun then," and he went up for a scrimmage. Needless to say, everyone was up for a scrimmage, the little people lined up against their saviors. The Philadelphia Eagles needlessly to say, one. Oh my God. Wow. Oh, that was chapter 6. No, I'm not singing. No. Towel snapping. Yeah. And Iron Rabbit. And Blazing Venus. All right, let's go back up here. Who else did I miss? And Sir Frank Otter. Thanks for being here, everybody. All right. Well, before we start chapter 7, has it been... Oh, what is it? Oh my God, this hasn't even been an hour yet. Feels like we've been here forever. All right. Well, outside the hurricane, anything new and exciting happening? Mm-hmm. I have nothing else, but I think what we might do is get something to drink here and try and wash this horrible taste away. Towel snapping means bare buns. Other than it being unseasonably warm, yeah. 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 I think we might do that. So, if you want, go to the bathroom, get something to eat, get something to drink, and we'll give it a few minutes. And then we'll come back and start the pain all over again because, well, this is what you want, and apparently you're more masochistic than I am. So, we'll see you in a few. All right. Well. Everybody take a deep breath. It's going to pinch a little. All right. Here we go. Chapter 7. The next morning, Billy awoke to the soft stabs of morning sun and a breakfast of cold mutton he must have tucked underneath one of his teats long ago. He was groggily wiping his mouth when a broad-shouldered figure slapped what wound up being his inner thigh. "Ready to roll, Billy?" Wide receiver Greg... Oh, these guys again. Wide receiver Greg Lewis said. Billy hopped on Lewis's back with a sigh. "Ready as I'll ever be." "Echo Trace." The great creature whooped and sprinted to catch up with his teammates. Wind whistled past the Wobbit's cauliflowered ears as he nestled down among Lewis's abundant triceps. The team made for the hills, sprinting and leapfrogging one another, and occasionally retrieving Doc, who kept falling off head first from the eagle and painfully reminding everyone of the dangers of chronic head trauma in football, as well as the fact that Doc existed. But then it was time to put the fun aside and return to the YOLO as usual. The Eagles wished them a strong season and headed back to their locker room, where ice baths, hot towels, and lukewarm cheerleaders awaited. May the wind under your wings bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks. Oh, no. Oh. I'm sorry. I have to do my other voice. May the wind under your wings bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks, exclaimed Dumbledore, though it was unclear to whom he was exclaiming. Catch the queefle, he added, making it all too clear that he was just exclaiming it for fun. The band marched onward. They crossed a stream and a rock and then another stream, which turned out to be, technically, the same stream. Exhausted, they stopped at the next same rock to regroup. Dumbledore cleared his throat. It appears it was... Wait a minute, what? Oh. It appears it's way potting time, he began heavily. You must act as you see fit. I shall act. Oh, God, whatever. At this, he snapped on 2 white thin gloves, smeared black mud on his face, and began to sing the opening bars of Toot Toot Tootsie Goodbye. Oh, Jesus. Ballin and Drawlin quickly put a stop to this new career. No shit. Wait a minute, is this him? I don't know. Very well. Still, I didn't anticipate coming even this far with you. This is, after all, Harry's adventure. He turned his twinkling, disturbingly exaggerated eyes on the Wobbit. All I wanted was to see you go through puberty. Now that I know how short and weird-looking you'll wind up, it is time I take care of other business. The little people half-heartedly begged him to stay, though inwardly they were all a bit relieved to have a break from the old man, who had recently taken to referring to them as Dumbledore's armoire, and stuffing his extra hats in their mouths. Oh. Oh, this is him. But first, I will stay with you for a couple more chapters, because I have completely forgotten what that other business was, the wizard continued. He sensed it involved elves and was incredibly important and interesting. So important and interesting, in fact, that someone producing a bloated movie adaptation of their quest could just make it up later. Oh well, breakfast time. Despite it being well into evening, Dumbledaff went on to outline their options in this land. A Denny's, a nice Greek diner, and an IHOP, or Bjorn's house. Whatever. Once the little people realized he had stopped talking, they burst into debate and discussion and a little bribery, none of which I will detail here. They finally decided to go to Bjorn's house because the bathroom would probably be cleaner there, and they all really needed to go by now. Besides, the IHOP in Whittle Earth stood for International House of Putridity, and Denny's was more of a sci-fi guy. Dumbledaff soon slowed to a walk alongside the Wobbit.
I care about you very much, Harry, which is why I will tell you in advance of our destination. Do not stroll the corridors at night. Also, look what happens when I have important things to say.
Billy found this to be sound advice. Wobbits have trouble both with strolling and with corridors, since they fall over doing the former and can't eat any part of the latter. The sun was doing its final spiral down the great drain of the sky when Doc shrieked. Everybody assumed he was just having another one of his day terrors, until they noticed a swarm of suspiciously hairy bumblebees and a clump of suspiciously antlered plants. Who's this? Oh.
Aye, if one of those things were to prick me, I'd swell to twice my size,
moaned Loin. The others held out for something promisingly raunchy, but gave up remembering that Loin had very serious and life-threatening allergies. A pregnant pause followed. Which Dumbledaff soon aborted. Oh, Jesus.
We have reached the driveway of Bjorn's house. Your secondary character should wait while Harry and I go on ahead.
A line of horses approached them in the driveway. Like the bees and plants, however, there was something strange about these horses, like the fact that they were all 7 feet tall and wore comically large top hats. Still, each one of them was clearly labeled Normal Horsey. And horse labelers had never lied to Billy before, so he put aside his doubts and prepared himself to meet the man of the house. It was then that he realized the man of the house was already standing in front of him, though he was so dark and brooding that Billy had mistaken him for a mere shadow of the house. Well, Well, you're excused, Bjorn grunted to his beast. Go away, and do some normal horsey things. Billy silently marveled at the intriguing enigma of the man before him. He had jet-black hair, so black that it almost seemed unnatural. His skin was a deep, oranged tan, and even though he stooped, he seemed as though he must be nearly twice as tall as the safe and reliable car parked outside his house. Bjorn turned to Billy, sensing the Wobbit's growing depression. Well, who are you and what do you want?
I am Dumbledaff, said the smiling wizard, and this is Harry.
He raised his eyebrows significantly at the giant man. Bjorn adjusted his definitely real hair.
Harry,
repeated Dumbledaff. Bjorn cast his unremarkable dark brown gaze over the rest of the little people, who had, of course, completely ignored Dumbledaff's command. Well, I only want wait a minute, what? Oh, I only harbor refugees from the Moblins. Bjorn grunted. Everyone became rather dejected at hearing this until Dwalin explained that what refugee meant. Dumbledaff acquainted Bjorn with the true purpose of their quest, while the others entered Bjorn's estate. Their host followed them in. With a clap of his great hand, fluorescent lights turned on and several massive dogs appeared from the adjoining massive dog storage room. "Bjork, Bjork," said the dogs. Oh my God. "Nice, Bach, Bach," corrected Bjorn as he adjusted their dog costumes and hurried them out of the room. The not dogs soon returned with great dishes of meatballs and berry parfaits on their strong backs. The weary travelers then had such a feast as they had not enjoyed since Elrond's hospitality in Livenwell. As they ate, Bjorn swilled vodka from a secret flask and gave them advice for surviving the impending dark forest of Jerkwood and its enchanted river. The little people ignored what he said, having grown too frustrated by this point with their futile attempts to assemble their chairs. Sometimes that's what you're good with, IKEA. It is a queer feature of Bjorn's part of the woods that the sun sets only briefly in summer months. It has something to do with how the sky works, and after that it is a total mystery. Thus, Billy had a hard time sleeping that night. He tried counting sheep, but there weren't more than half a dozen outside. He tried counting calories, but he loved each of them too dearly to objectify them like that. He tried to let the deep and very normal rhythm of the woods lull him to sleep, but he slowly realized that ear-shattering thumping bass isn't actually all that easy to sleep to. Then he remembered Dumbledaff's warning. What was it that happened in these woods at night? Wait a minute, who's this? Oh, he's talking to himself. Oh, Billy, you really do have some grand fat globules there among the bag boy, he thought to himself as he crept curiously to the window. He wiped the fog off the glass and watched for the mere seconds he had before his gaping mouth would fog up the window again. And what was that beat in the woods but the pounding of house music? And there, in the very center of the multicolored light-up dance floor, among the fog machines and strobe lights, leading the revelry, was their host, Bjorn, who would have been nearly unrecognizable if his original disguise had not been so transparent and terrible. He bobbed to the music with Nordic efficiency, his sculpted body raised to its full height and his beautiful blonde hair let free from its mousy prison. His eyes were bluer than blue, and so bright that they seemed to light up the entire forest. Yes, Bjorn was a skin changer, able to wash off the layers of bronze he normally caked on to reveal the pale, luminescent flesh below. Nor did he revel alone. All the bumblebees and horses and plants and dogs had shed their sunglasses and trench coats, and Billy could now see them for what they were. They were moose, great and noble beasts that had converged on this spot to shake a well-subsidized and high standard of living. Shake a well-subsidized and high standard of living leg along with their Swedish master. But I can do a Swedish voice, so he's going to be German. Or Austrian, whatever. The next morning, a visibly hungover Bjorn saddled up in his most convincing ponies and sent their group off with provisions and good wishes. Billy remained quiet about what he saw, even when the little people speculated about the glitter covering Bjorn's entire body. I, too, will leave you here, said Dumbledaff. Then, much to their elated protestations,
Goodbye. Remember to never be centaurs. And off he wandered. Ugh. The rest rode north in somber silence to the fringe of the great jerkwood. As they marched single file into the gloom of the woods, it grew to be pitch black. Not the pitch blackiness you and I have experienced in our comfortable bourgeois lives, but rather a fantasy novel sort of pitch blackness. The little people could barely discern the path by day. At night, they ate their meager rations around a lantern fueled by extra bacon grease Billy had found between his bacon. Worse still, the darkness only amplified the voice of the forest. Quietly but aggressively, it blew through the branches of the trees and just acted like a total jerk. Look at this kindergarten field trip, it said smugly the first night. Is that a beard or just a hairy bib your mommy makes you wear? Hearing this, Buffer punched wildly at the darkness, but the voice of Jerkwood only chuckled. Perhaps you will prevail in this journey after all, it commented one night at dinner, as Billy prepared to bite into his meager supper. But you will never stop being 4 feet tall. Indeed, all the wildlife in the morbid place bore marks of Jerkwood's bullying. The adventurer's daily slog took them past drooping flowers and moss-covered rocks gone prematurely bald. One day, at last, they reached a roaring current, a river, and a boat on the other shore. What a jerk the forest was. Billy and the little people set to scheming. No one could recall Bjorn's warning about the water's enchantments, but they remembered it had the effect of dampening clothes. Determined thus to reel in the boat, they tied a hook to a rope and told Beaver to throw it to the vessel. Beaver nodded feebly as the forest had brought out all the insecurities he had spent his entire life overcompensating for. He gave it a hurl and missed. Nice shot, came the smug voice of Jerkwood. Do you even lift? Incensed, Beaver decided to go heavy or go home, and his inability to do the latter was kind of the whole point of his quest. He tied the rope around Doc and hoisted him above his head. He then spun around several times and flung his unnecessary friend across the water, thus simultaneously inventing the sport of midget tossing and the art of involuntary scuba diving. This time the rope clattered promisingly onto the boat, and Doc fell with a slightly more worrying clatter amongst the sharp rocks on the other side. Complete success, hollered Beaver. Billy and several little people joined him on the rope and hauled as Horry, Slory, and Courtney did nothing, and Sorkenshield did nothing important. The boat did not move. It must have been tethered on the other bank, which is literally the only reason a rowboat would be staying in one place in the middle of a large flowing river. No pulling out method will ever work, he ejaculated, growing despairingly. I can go into the physics if you like. The little people are a feisty and persistent people. However, with a fairly serious Napoleon complex and an even more serious Oedipus complex, which explains why it is so important to them to force their way back into the dark, enclosed caverns where they were born. Oh, Jesus. At last, they brought the boat to the shore and crossed. But as the last of them were reaching the other side, Buffer noticed the prone figure of Doc, and in reaching to hoist him out, lost the boat. No turning back now, remarked Billy. Until then, it had always been a legitimate possibility. The others were trying in vain to awaken the still bleeding Doc,
They concluded that the jagged rocks he had hit his head on must have been enchanted with some sort of strange sleeping spell.
Oh, he looks so cute when he's sleeping, observed Slory. Just look at him spasm. It's like he's dancing in his dreams.
They all agreed that it was adorable and decided to wipe the foam from his mouth and keep going. Suddenly, Feely stopped dead along the path.
I say, is that a bluesy concert poster pegged on that tree?
They squinted at the red oak. You're a bluesy concert poster, spat back Jerkwood, then coughed quietly. Heckling could be a difficult business, even for a forest. Disregarding the crickets chirping in the background, they all agreed it was a concert poster. Oh, man. With music dancing in their minds and filling their hearts and bloating their souls, they soon became convinced they could hear just a... What? They could hear just a concert in the distance. They would run toward it, glimpsing a lithe figure in a shining cape performing for an arena of jiving fans, only for the scene to vanish before their eyes. The letdown of these hallucinations was horrible, especially for Doc, who was still unconscious. What eventually awoke Doc, of all things, was an old Wobbit song, sung by Billy. It just so happens that most Wobbit songs are orchestrated for one voice and one sword hit against a big rock. Really, they are just a sequence of swallowing noises over a rhythmic clanging sounds, but they were loud and discordant enough to wake up Doc with a start. You and I just saved a little person through the power of music alone, gasped Billy, proudly to his little blade before sheathing it. I must call you Sting. Oh, this is painful. His heroism had barely sunk in before a huge spider dropped into their midst. I mean, seriously, the thing was massive. Sorkenshield, Philly, Killy, Kiwi, Biffer, Buffer, Loin, Groin. They all blanched. Hoary, Courtney, and Slory blanched to the root of their tans, which wasn't far. Drawlin and Ballin blanched, just like anybody else would. Because why wouldn't they? Doc, having just awoken, was not allowed to blanch for 3 weeks. Oh my God. Billy blanched the hardest, for this was, like, pretty much the biggest spider he had ever seen. At least 1.5 inches across. Legs akimbo, it treaded softly toward them with death in its eyes, and at least enough poison in its fangs to make you itch for a week or so. Not even a small dead leaf in its path could slow down the monstrosity for more than a minute, and as it drew closer, the little people held an argument council to decide who should face it down. Beef her! Buffer! Clamored Loin and Groin. Wait a minute, who's this? Oh, how about you, Pipsqueaks, instead? Snarled Buffer, who had always felt intimidated by creatures who could perform more simultaneous arm curls than him. Me? I would have no clue where to stick it, and I have no protection, cried Loin defensively. Seriously. You do not hear that setup, shot back Beaver. You have one job on this journey. Hoary smiled, feeling at home in petty debate.
Maybe we should send Feely in there, since Kiwi can carry on their mutual genes, even in the event of his death, suggested Slory practically.
Aye, we are not brothers,
sputtered Feely. Don't forget me, losers, interjected the voice of Jerkwood. Who's this? Wait, what? Oh, sadly they don't realize they are 200 paces from the forest's edge, thought, apparently myself, as the narrator. Ugh. Just then, Courtney shrieked. The spider had crawled up her ankle. She passed immediately into a death faint. Refusing to be outdone, Hori and Slory released a fragrance called Dead Faint, and then passed out as well. Beaver and Buffer, loin and groin, too, lay on the ground, having knocked each other senseless. Sorkinshield and Dwalin were busy restraining a still sputtering Feely, and the spider seized its opportunity to weave a web around Sorkinshield's and Dwalin's shoulders. Billy and Ballin rushed to their rescue, but got another spiderweb put all over their faces, giving them a deathly scare. Meanwhile, confused by all the hubbub, Kiwi decided to calm his nerves by eating the spider. Before anyone could appreciate this anticlimax, into the clearing burst a colorful gang. They gathered up the prostrate figures of Billy and the little people and bound them in rope. Kiwi cocked his head curiously, which they thought was cute, so they took him too. Had they been in any state, our adventurers would have recognized their captors as figures from their strange earlier visions. But they were not in any state. They were in a forest, and soon they would be in a kingdom. Oh, my God. Oh. Wow. That was chapter 7. All right. Anything spicy yet, Mama? Spicy like what? Nothing spicy here. Ooh. Barbecued chicken and potato salad. That sounds good. Yeah, Sir Frank Otter, chicken is freaking ridiculous. It's really expensive. Crazy. Oh, I had some of that the other day, WM. Chicken fettuccine with broccoli. Yeah, that was good. well, Rabbit, I'm glad this makes your chores go by quickly. I've only been reading for almost an hour and a half, just shy of it. And yet it feels like an eternity. All right. Well, let's see. So that was 3 chapters down. We'll see where we are at the end of this one. All right. So chapter 8. The trees had been tampered with. What? Oh, the trees had been tampered with in these parts, condemned to a fate worse than deforestation. This is helping you relax, Iron Rabbit. Really? Is your cat still asleep? Okay. The trees had been tramped within these parts, condemned to a fate worse than deforestation. By the light of 11 torches, the captured YOLOers could see that indeed an endless supply of concert posters were tacked up on all the trunks, all featuring a corpulent elf in rhinestones, sunglasses forwardly thrusting his pelvis. Oh my God. The captions read, "The Elvis King." And Elvis King Live and Viva Las Valmar, starring the Elvis King. We must be in the realm of the Elvis King, declared Sorkenshield, who had recently regained consciousness. Oh. Is this what an aneurysm feels like? I smell burnt toast. I'm a talking tree, declared a jerkwood tree. Sorry, I forgot it was State the Obvious Day. The Elvis King dweller... Wait a minute. Oh, the Elvis King dwells yonder, continued Sorkenshield, in a castle... Oh, aye, the Elvis King dwells yonder, continued Sorkenshield, in a castle known as Graceland, with his elven fangirls who... Sorkenshield stopped his useless exposition abruptly, for a rich baritone voice began to flow through the forest like sweet molasses. Out from the trees, leapt, came a horde of shrieking elven fangirls, wielding quill pens and bearing body parts to be signed. The elven fangirls' curvy figures suggested there might be food nearby, and even Sorkenshield, whose perception of women remained unchanged due to the fact that he hadn't interacted with any during any part of their adventure, thought these ladies were pretty cute. As the fangirls caressed them along. I thought it said among them. I can't read anymore. As the fangirls caressed them along, the mysterious sun grew louder. Soon, they approached Graceland's golden gates, engraved with the sheet music of a lost melody and the silhouette of a plump man catching his breath. At last, they were led past the ivory pillars at the castle entrance and into the jungle-themed Great Hall. It was there the Elvis King was sprawled upon a leopard-print throne, his enormous body clad in a gold-encrusted jumpsuit. Elven fangirls styled his raven-black hair and massaged his pelvis with fingers, dewed with the rosewood oil and peanut butter.
Keep the dogs away.
The Elvis King vaguely strummed a giant guitar with one hand. The other held a microphone to his pouty lips. The little people marveled at the castle's size, grandeur, and utter lack of taste. Billy slipped on his anklet, incorrectly thinking that for once it might help him blend in with his surroundings. After crooning the last verse of "You ain't nothing but a half-elf," the Elvis King pointed a fleshy finger in the direction of the little people. His demand was simple.
Well, what do you... Who is you, and, what's up?
"Aw. We are but poor travelers seeking shelter for the night," Sorkenshield replied. He elected not to disclose their intended destination. If the Elvis King learned of the treasure that was awaiting them, he might find it first, melt it down, and use it to sculpt a gold statuette of a baby angel playing a saxophone. The king was unsure nonetheless.
Well, I don't know, man. I think we got a darlings. Why don't you throw them in? We got a dungeon over there.
God, I can't do this.
Babies can't have no suspicious guys, you see.
He agreed. With that, the Elvis King began the rendition of Suspicious Guys. The few elven fangirls who had been trained to not scream or faint escorted all the YOLOers to the Graceland's jailhouse. All that is, except Billy. With his anklet strapped back around his designated roll of fat, the Wobbit again found that nobody could stomach to look at him. It wasn't that they couldn't see him. No, thought Billy, with a throaty chuckle. That would have been silly. It was simply that no one could bear to look his way. Suddenly, Billy realized that this was no ordinary anklet, but a very special anklet, and quite possibly the one anklet to fool them all. It became immaculately clear to him the precise power the jewel brought to its wearer. To move a 48 frame per... to move at 48 frames per second, causing everyone around him to instinctively look away and vomit a little in their mouths. Jesus. Meanwhile, huh? Oh. Okay, D. Robertson. We'll have fun. Have a good night. Farrell. Hi, Farrell. Welcome into the, to the pain. But somehow I think you deserve the pain. You're always trying to stab me, so, well, here's my revenge. It's going to pinch a little. Take a deep breath. All right, where was I? Something about a fat man singing a song in peanut butter. Where'd it go? Meanwhile, the little people remained trapped in an especially chintzy dungeon. For days, the Elvis King obstinately refused to free them, not even in exchange for Doc's promise to stop spitting out blood every time he saw gold. What? Whatever. Nonetheless, the imprisonment was surprisingly pleasant for the little people. Every so often, the warden would throw a swinging party in the jailhouse. And I'm sure it rocked. And elven fangirls would come down and dance with the little people, if the Elvis King was napping or in a coma. Ballin and Drawlin resisted at first. There were tales of old that spoke of the Elvis King stealing the sound of rock from their ancestors. But they eventually came to the conclusion that music was a universal language, and appropriation could sometimes be an unfortunate but necessary step on the road to integration. Even Hoary and Slory and Courtney got into the spirit of Graceland by losing touch with reality and rushing into doomed marriages with the warden. At first, Billy enjoyed any excuse to wear the anklet and make people physically ill, but he soon began to tire of life at Graceland. No one would look at him except for Doc, and only during those bouts of temporary blindness. He began to search for an escape, but the Golden Gate only opened up at the Elvis King's command. The king himself never found any reason to leave, so Billy slept in the fur-lined front seat of the Elvis King's hot pink carriage. But the Wobbit soon discovered something peculiar, and was almost embarrassed to have not noticed it several days ago. In the middle of the tropical Great Hall was a vast indoor waterfall, and Billy decided to follow its stream in search of its source. Sure enough, like all rivers, it went directly through a cellar before meandering down to the Jerkwood Forest. All Billy had to do was free the little people, and they could let the river just carry them away from Graceland. At night, Billy silently waited for the Warren to leave. What? The Warren. That night, Billy silently waited for the warden to leave the jailhouse after a Cold War-themed party. When he finally emerged, obliviously humming, "Now and Then There's..." What? Whatever. Oh, now and then there's a troll such as I. All right. Billy crept up from behind him and smashed him across the head with a platinum record. He then kicked the warden around with his stolen pair of Elvis King's suede shoes of sapphire. lifted his keys, and ran him over with the pink carriage. It was the perfect crime. It looked exactly like every other drunken night at Graceland. In the jailhouse, Billy found that the little people were still recovering from the last orgastic rager. Oh, I'm sorry, orgiastic. Whatever, either way. They had many questions, such as what his plan was, where they were, and if he could please try to be a little quieter. Wait a minute, what is this? Oh. Now, in time, hushed the Wobbit. If the Elvish King wakes up, if the Elvis King wakes up and finds out how much of his peanut butter I ate tonight, we are done for. I don't think you want to eat that peanut butter, man. I'm pretty sure that peanut butter's been in some questionable places. But that's just my opinion as the narrator. Nobody listens to me. As they left the jailhouse, Billy kindly returned the keys to the warden. That will save him some trouble that he's bound to be in for, said Billy to himself, placing the keys on the elf's bruised, viciously beaten and unconscious body. The fugitives arrived at the cellar without impediment. The elven fangirls were all preoccupied, for the Elvis King had been in the bathroom for a really, really long time. I think they're in for a surprise. Though unable to look Billy in the eyes, Sorkinshield smiled in admiration. Bag boy. Oh no, wrong voice.
"Arr, bag boy," he said, "walk and talk."
Dumbledaff was back for a second. They headed in a circle around the cellar.
"Aye, I'm impressed,"
continued Sorkinshield. He stopped in his tracks.
"That is all."
Okay. Billy showed the little people the river that would deliver them out of Graceland.
"Bag boy, you're worthless." "What?" "You're a worthless scoop of lard."
"Excuse me," snapped Sorkinshield.
"I thought you had a sensible plan for how to escape."
"Well, very well," said Billy, downcast and rather annoyed. "Come along back to the jailhouse, and I will lock you all up again, and you can discuss alternative plans over feasts and alcohol until you're all too drunk and bloated to ever escape." This thought made Buffer and Beaver scream and reflexively start doing pull-ups. Everyone agreed it would be best to find some way to sail down the river. Wait a minute, what happened? Where'd I go? There was not much available to them in the cellar. Only a nuclear bunker, an armory, a time machine, and a pile of barrels. With no other choice, Billy and the little people latched on to the time machine and floated with it down the river. Poor little people. This trip was tough after all, with the time machine constantly ducking them underwater and interrupting Sorkinshield's speeches. Courtney frantically reapplied her makeup while Hoary and Slory attempted to straighten their hair before the paparazzi could snap a photo. The ordeal reignited Beaver and Buffer's long-standing debate over whether or not swimming was just running for wet people. Jesus. Kiwi seemed annoyed, probably because time machines are not in its natural habitat. But then Feely's eyes spotted an extraordinary rake within a barricade fortress.
"Paddle toward it,"
ordered Sorkinshield.
"Aye, we have reached Drake Town. Schooner, schooner."
"What sort of creatures inhabit Rake Town?" Billy asked.
"Aye, men," answered Sorkinshield. "Real men, capable men, the sort of men I like."
I don't know if I want to read this anymore. I think it's going in a weird direction. And then their leader, Richard Nixon. Oh no, this is still him.
"Aye, and then their leader, Richard Nixon, will surely give us food and shelter."
Jesus. Like the Elvis King, Richard Nixon had more than once faked his own death in order to get a fresh start in Whittle Earth. The river flowed into Raketown through a water gate in the barricade known as the Dry Portal. Ugh, this is painful. "Aye, open your water gate!" Sorkin Shield bellowed at the guards. It's called Dry Portal," corrected the captain, but he complied. The guards of Raketown were not keeping very careful watch, since there hadn't been any real need with what Nixon's outstanding foreign policy recorded. Oh, yeah, doesn't make any sense anyway, never mind. Men were not known to have particularly good food, and it remained a mystery how they grew the canned apparatus they stored it all in. Jesus. These guys are not very bright. But Billy and the little people welcomed the chance to see the town's famous rake, which was enshrined in the town square. For what a tool it was! Its tines were arranged in the shape of a scallop shell too perfect to exist in nature, with ends curved like a baby's first smile. Leaves were said to quiver at the side of the rake's razor-sharp teeth, and then thank the heavens that such a magnificent foe should bring their demise. It was just a really solid rake, all things considered. The rake aside, there was nothing remarkable about Raketown. Every house was the same shade of white, and Billy and the little people guessed that Nixon dwelled in the largest of the white houses. Oh, we're almost done. We're almost there. It's almost over. Aye, take us to your master, Sorkin Shield commanded the guard at the entrance, who was even more totally checked out than the captain at the Dry Portal. But the leader of Raketown did not receive his guest cordially. Who's this? Oh. Well. Gentlemen, you listen here, and you listen good, he groused. I can't do a Richard Nixon voice. He groused, wait a minute. Oh, I'd sure like to know who you are and what gives you the right to make me late for my table tennis practice. Blood rushed to Sorkin Shield's face. Aye, I'm Ernst Sorkin Shield, leader of the little people, he shouted. We are on a YOLO to acquire Puff the Magic Dragon's treasure. We have defeated armies of trolls, moblins, and, well, a really big spider. We only just escaped the lair of the Elvis King. Dick, you know what I think? I think you're a small man. I thinks I could buy your ping-pong room and make it into a ping-pong room for orphans. Oh, I'm better than you. How dare you treat me like other people? Nixon glanced at a framed picture on the wall of him shaking hands with the Elvis King after a gentlemanly game of who can sweat the most. As he contemplated the risk of a rift with the king, Billy let out a large sneeze. Now, as I've tried to convey, the power of the anklet would make the fairest elf performing the loveliest dance in gorgeous midsummer look like the homeliest troll performing the thoroughest nose-picking in slushy late winter, so you can imagine what a wabbit sneezing might look like. Look, bag boy, said Sorkin Shield as he looked away and gritted his teeth. Just take off that anklet, all right? When Billy sheepishly slipped it off, a young servant of Nixon's gasped. Master, he exclaimed. No. What voice? Wait a minute. Where was I going with that voice? I have no idea. I have so many in my head. Where was I? Oh, a young servant of Nixon's gasped. Master, he exclaimed. It is the bag boy. The what? The bag boy. You know, the one
we're always singing about when we're not singing about the wreck.
The citizens of Raketown fell into two categories: the silent majority and the always singing minority. Nixon had become accustomed to tuning out minorities, but this time he listened to what the young man had to sing. And again, I'm not going to sing it, but I will unfortunately read it to you. The king of flimsy plastic. The king of paper strong. Although he may look spastic, he'll fill our hearts with song. Our kitchens will be refilled, the shelves will be re-racked. He will clean up where we've spilled. His change will be exact. Although the line is growing, his patience with old men. Wait a minute, oh no, he's patient with old men. He'll ask them, how's it going? As they search for a pen. Your bags he'll always carry, however much you take. He'll make us all so merry, though much less than the rake. Oh my God. There were no more oh, wait a minute. No, there were. Oh my God, no. Oh, there were more verses to the song, but they were all about the rake. Nixon, who had worked as a bag boy in his father's grocery, recognized an opportunity to tout his humble beginnings and curry favor with the always singing minority. Billy and his fellow YOLOers were thus sheltered in the second largest White House and decked in respectable Republican clothing. Citizens and foreigners far and wide asked Billy to bag their produce for them, though that was thought of as something to do with... What? Though that was thought of as something to do after you'd seen the rake. The little people began to act a bit more kindly toward Billy, knowing how important it was to respect the layered metaphors of the many songs in this book. And unfortunately, many there are. At the end of a fortnight, the little people began to think of departure. Nixon was not at all sorry to let them go. I hope that dragon fries the freeloading sons of midgets that you are, he was heard grumbling on tapes released many years later. But all he had said in public was, you take care now. Watch out for that puff. Before they left, Billy and the little people beheld the rake for one last time. They then looked up and to the left and saw for the first time the mountain with 0 friends. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, it is as close to 2 hours as we can get because, well, quite honestly, I just can't take any more of the pain. We have stopped at chapter 9. At a later date, unfortunately, that's where we're going to resume. What have I missed in the conversation? Farrell. Farrell's taking me to bed with her. Apparently, I wore out Gutter's Pub. Finally. Laying in bed, rain lightly falling on a roof, and a man reading to me. Well, I hope you're able to fall asleep anyway. That peanut butter has been in some really awkward places. Yes, Sir Frank Otter. I'm pretty sure of that. Sure, that's peanut butter you don't want to eat. Well, now that I think we've reached that point, I want to take the time to thank everybody for stopping by and listening, as always. And like I said, we'll continue on with the pain at another time. So, I will let you all finish your coma as painlessly as I can. And I will see you all another time, okay? So again, thank you for everybody for stopping by and saying hi. And we'll see you another time. So, we'll hit that outro. And I will see you tomorrow. Hopefully, don't forget, tomorrow's Sunday. Losing track of my days. Tomorrow's Sunday. So, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Unless otherwise told, on Shizzy's for our Sunday Spice. And you can listen to us all sound like a bunch of idiots. So until then, have a good night, have a good sleep, and we'll see you later. Night.
Bold and free, chasing Elmo with a stun gun sea, laughing loud through the stormy sea. My crazy friend, you'll always be. Yamaha rider, bold and free, chasing Elmo with a stun gun sea, laughing loud through the stormy sea. My crazy friend, you'll always be. Roaring engines on a moonlit night, dodging danger, hearts alight. From the shore to the stars, our flight with my biker friend in sight. Crazy Yamaha rider, saying stupid things with laughter in the air as our voices sing. All the tales we'll tell and the joy it brings, my friend, forever on freedom's wings. Through the waves and the wild we roam, this Yamaha biker finds a home, telling tales with a joyful moan, stupid shit and laugh alone. From sunrise bright to twilight's end, forever riding with my friend. Through the storms, our hearts they'll mend, together on this path we wend. Crazy Yamaha rider, saying stupid things with laughter